Midnight cast its velvet shadow over the grand ballroom of Winchester Hall, where Lady Julia Whitmore stood alone beneath the vast glass dome. The last of the candles had been extinguished hours ago, yet she remained, her ivory gown catching the moonlight as she swayed to music only she could hear. The magnificent ball celebrating the coming-of-age of Lord Winchester's daughter had concluded, the guests long departed to their carriages, yet she could not bring herself to retire. The weight of her father's debts pressed upon her shoulders like a physical burden, making sleep impossible. Tomorrow, she would be forced to accept Lord Penworth's proposal, a man thrice her age with a temperament as sour as vinegar. The alliance would save her family from ruin, her younger sisters from disgrace. It was her duty. "You dance as though you're saying farewell to freedom," came a deep voice from the shadows. Julia froze, her heart hammering against her ribs. She had believed herself alone with her sorrow. From the darkness emerged Sebastian Jarrett, the Duke of Thornfield, his tall figure cutting an imposing silhouette against the moonlit windows. His reputation preceded him, a man of immense wealth and influence, yet shrouded in scandal and whispers of a dark past. He had arrived late to the ball, causing a ripple of murmurs among the guests, and had departed early without engaging in more than the most perfunctory pleasantries. "Your Grace," she cursed, mortified at being discovered in such an improper situation. "I beg your pardon. I thought the house was asleep." "As did I," he replied, his penetrating gaze never leaving her face. "Yet here we both are, Lady Whitmore, haunting the night like restless spirits. You know who I am?" A smile ghosted across his austere features. "I make it my business to know the names of extraordinary women." "Sir, you flatter me undeservedly," she said, backing away. "I should return to my chambers." "If we were discovered, the scandal would be considerable," he finished, his voice tinged with something like amusement. "Though I suspect scandal is not unfamiliar to either of us." Julia stiffened. "I don't know what you mean." "Don't you?" "The daughter of Baron Whitmore, whose gaming debts have become the talk of London. Who tomorrow will sacrifice herself to that old lecher Penworth to save her family name." His words were not spoken with cruelty but with a surprising gentleness. "How dare you?" she whispered, though there was no fire in her words, only the hollow recognition of truth. "I dare because I see in you something I recognize." He stepped closer, moonlight illuminating half his face, leaving the other in shadow. "A cage, however gilded, remains a cage. We all have our duties, Your Grace." "Indeed." His eyes, dark as midnight seas, held hers. "And what of your duty to yourself?" Julia laughed bitterly. "Such luxury is not afforded to women of my station, however much we might dream of it." Sebastian Jarrett moved with unexpected grace for a man of his imposing stature, circling her as though they were engaged in some elaborate dance. "What if I told you there might be another way?" "I would say you speak in riddles, sir." "Not riddles. Possibilities." He stopped directly before her, close enough that she could discern the faint scent of sandalwood and leather that clung to him. "I have a proposition for you, Lady Whitmore." "A proposition?" Her voice faltered, scandal and impropriety screaming in her mind. "Not of the sort you're imagining," he said, reading her thoughts with unnerving accuracy. "I require a wife." "You require freedom from Penworth and your father's debts." Julia's breath caught in her throat. "You cannot be serious." "I rarely jest, particularly about matters of such consequence." "But, why?" "You don't know me. We've never so much as spoken before tonight." "I know enough." His gaze was steady, unflinching. "I know you dance alone at midnight rather than surrender to the future chosen for you. I know your reputation is spotless despite your father's indiscretions. And I know you have the courage to stand before me now, unchaperoned, rather than fleeing as convention would dictate. That's hardly a foundation for marriage. It's more than most matches can claim." He took her hand, the touch sending an unexpected warmth through her despite the coolness of his fingers. "I am not offering love, Lady Whitmore. I cannot. But I can offer you protection, freedom from financial worry, and a position that would allow you to pursue whatever interests your heart desires." And what would you gain from such an arrangement? For the first time, a shadow crossed his face. An heir. Respectability. An end to the whispers that have followed me since my return from India. Julia withdrew her hand. So I would trade one cage for another. Perhaps. But mine would have an open door. The grandfather clock in the hall struck one, the sound echoing through the empty ballroom like a warning. I must go, she said, gathering her skirts. Of course. He bowed formally. But before you do, consider this, I will be at the old stone bridge on the edge of Lord Winchester's estate tomorrow at noon. If you come, we can discuss terms. If not, I wish you happiness in your life with Lord Penworth. As Julia hurried back to her guest chambers, the Duke's words echoed in her mind. An open cage. Freedom. But at what cost? Dawn broke over the rolling hills of Hampshire, casting long shadows across Julia's bed where she lay sleepless, her mind tumbling with impossible choices. A knock at her door roused her from her thoughts. A letter for you, miss, said the maid, bobbing a curtsy as she entered. Julia's heart leapt, thinking it might be from the Duke, but the seal belonged to her father. With trembling fingers, she broke the wax. My dearest daughter, I write with joyous news. Lord Penworth has increased his offer for your hand to include the immediate settlement of all our outstanding debts, along with a generous allowance for your sisters. The papers will be drawn up this very day, and he wishes to advance the wedding to next week, rather than waiting for the spring as originally discussed. This is a triumph for our family's honor and future. I have already sent word of your acceptance. Your devoted father. Julia crumpled the letter in her fist, a single tear escaping down her cheek. Her fate was being sealed without even the courtesy of her consent. Penworth's eagerness only increased her dread. His reputation for discarding mistresses was matched only by rumors of his cruel treatment of his previous wife, who had died under mysterious circumstances. She dressed hurriedly, dismissing her maid's offers of assistance. The old stone bridge. Noon. She had mere hours to decide. Sebastian Jarrett, Duke of Thornfield, stood at the railing of the ancient bridge, watching the water rush beneath. He had not expected her to come. Their midnight encounter had been impulsive on his part, something quite out of character for a man whose every action was typically calculated. Yet something about the solitary figure dancing in moonlight had stirred memories long buried. Of another woman who had danced under different stars, in a land far from England's shores. A woman he had failed to protect. Your Grace. He turned to find Lady Julia Whitmore approaching, her blue walking dress a splash of colour against the grey stone. Her auburn hair was partially concealed beneath a modest bonnet, her expression resolute despite the shadows beneath her eyes that spoke of a sleepless night. Lady Whitmore. I confess I doubted you would come. As did I, she admitted, coming to stand beside him. Yet here I am. May I ask what prompted your decision? She produced a crumpled letter from her reticule. My father has accelerated my sentence. Lord Penworth wishes to claim his prize without delay. Sebastian's jaw tightened. I see. Do you? Do you understand what it means to be traded like cattle, to have your worth measured only in how well you can mend a family's fortunes or provide an heir? I understand more than you might think, he said quietly. Though I won't pretend the burden falls equally on men and women in our society. Julia studied his face, searching for something, sincerity, perhaps, or deceit. Your proposition, you mentioned terms. Yes. He straightened, businesslike now. I offer marriage, with all the financial security and social standing that comes with being a duchess. Your father's debts will be settled in full. Your sisters will be provided for, with dowry sufficient to secure advantageous matches. And in return? You would fulfill the social obligations of my wife, hosting the occasional dinner, appearing at required functions. We would present a united front to society. And... He hesitated. In time, an heir would be expected. Colour flooded her cheeks. I see. Beyond these requirements, your time would be your own. You may pursue your interests, whether charitable works, academic studies, or simply the enjoyment of life's pleasures. I maintain residences in London, Hampshire, and Scotland, all would be at your disposal. And what of affection? Companionship? Sebastian's expression remained carefully neutral. I cannot promise love, Lady Whitmore. My heart is not mine to give. But I can offer respect, consideration, and fidelity. That's more than many marriages begin with, she observed. Indeed. Julia turned away, gazing out at the flowing river below. There are rumors about you, Your Grace. Dark whispers concerning your time in India. They say you returned with blood on your hands. There are truths and falsehoods in what they say. His voice had grown colder. I will not defend myself against gossip. But I swear to you, on whatever honor you believe I possess, that I would never harm you. She faced him again, her green eyes fierce with sudden determination. I have conditions of my own. Sebastian raised an eyebrow, surprised. I'm listening. First, I must have your word that my sisters will be welcome in our home whenever they wish to visit. Second, I require an allowance of my own, not to be negotiated through you for every ribbon or book. Third. She paused, gathering courage. If after 1 year either of us finds the arrangement intolerable, we will discreetly separate, though remaining legally wed. He considered her demands with a thoughtful expression. The first two are easily granted. The third would be complicated, but not impossible. Though I would add that should you bear a child, separation would no longer be an option. Julia nodded, having expected as much. Then we have an agreement. We do. He extended his hand, and she placed her gloved fingers in his. I shall call upon your father this afternoon. He will be suspicious of your sudden interest. A wry smile touched Sebastian's lips. Let him be. A man desperate to clear his debts will not question his good fortune too closely. As they sealed their unusual pact with a handshake rather than a kiss, neither could have predicted how profoundly their lives would intertwine, nor the secrets that would threaten to tear them apart. The announcement of the engagement between the Duke of Thornfield and Lady Julia Whitmore sent shockwaves through London society. Speculation ran rampant. How had the daughter of a nearly bankrupt baron captured one of England's most eligible, if notorious, bachelors? The whispers grew only more frenzied when the wedding date was set for merely 3 weeks hence. It's indecent haste, declared Lady Harrington at her weekly salon. One can only imagine what necessitates such urgency. Perhaps the lady is in a delicate condition, suggested Mrs. Pembroke with malicious delight. Or perhaps the Duke's mysterious past is catching up to him, countered Lord Winfield. There are those who say his fortune from India was built on blood. Across London, in the elegant study of Thornfield House, Sebastian and Julia sat across from their solicitors, finalizing the marriage contracts. The prenuptial agreements were extraordinary in their generosity toward Julia, a fact that caused the elderly lawyer to peer repeatedly over his spectacles at the Duke with poorly concealed astonishment. Is everything in order, Mr. Gladwell? Sebastian inquired coolly. Yes, Your Grace, though I must advise that the settlement upon Lady Whitmore is unusually substantial. It is exactly as I wish it to be. Julia, who had been silent throughout most of the meeting, finally spoke. My father has reviewed these terms. He has, my lady, replied her own solicitor, a nervous young man named Mr. Tillman. And has expressed his enthusiastic approval. I imagine he would, she murmured. When the lawyers had departed, Sebastian poured 2 glasses of sherry and offered one to Julia. Your father's debts have been settled as of this morning. His creditors were most eager to accommodate the Duke of Thornfield's requests. Thank you, she said, accepting the glass but not drinking. Though I suspect they had little choice in the matter. Few do, when sufficient pressure is applied. He studied her face. You seem troubled. I'm to be married in 3 weeks to a man I've met precisely twice. Forgive me if I appear less than jubilant. His lips curved slightly. Would you prefer a longer engagement? It can be arranged, though it would invite more speculation than we already face. No, she sighed. Better to proceed as planned. The gossips will find new targets soon enough. She finally sipped her sherry, the warmth of it spreading through her chest. May I ask you a personal question, Your Grace? Sebastian, please. And yes, though I reserve the right not to answer. Why have you not married before now? You must be. She hesitated, realizing she didn't know his age. 34, he supplied. And it's a fair question. The simple answer is that I was abroad for many years. The complicated answer. He trailed off, his gaze distant. Perhaps another time. Julia nodded, recognizing the boundary he had drawn. Will you tell me about India? Something dark flickered in his eyes. What would you like to know? Anything. Everything. If we are to be husband and wife, even in name only, shouldn't I understand something of your past? Sebastian set down his glass and moved to the window, looking out at the manicured gardens of Thornfield House. India is a land of extraordinary beauty and terrible cruelty. I went there at 20, full of ambition and arrogance, the second son of a duke with no prospects but what I could carve for myself. Your brother was to inherit, then? Yes. Edward was the heir, the perfect son. I was less perfect. A shadow of old pain crossed his features. When he died of fever, I was recalled from Bombay to assume the title. By then, I had built a trading empire that rivaled the East India Company in certain regions. That must have made you enemies. More than you can imagine. He turned back to her. The rumors you've heard, some are true. I have blood on my hands, Julia. I've made choices that haunt my dreams. But not all shadows are cast by guilt. She rose from her chair, drawn to him despite her reservations. Is that why you cannot offer love? Because of something that happened in India? For a long moment, he was silent, the ticking of the mantel clock the only sound between them. Yes, he finally said, the word barely audible. But that is a story for another day. Perhaps when we know each other better. Julia felt a curious disappointment at his reticence, though she had no right to expect his confidences. They were still strangers, bound by an agreement rather than affection. I should go, she said. My aunt expects me for tea. Of course. He bowed formally. The carriage is at your disposal. As he escorted her to the door, their hands brushed briefly, sending an unexpected current through Julia's veins. She glanced up, startled, to find him watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. Until tomorrow, then, she murmured. Tomorrow, he echoed, his voice deeper than before. As Julia's carriage pulled away from Thornfield House, she pressed her fingers to her lips, trying to make sense of the confusing emotion stirring within her. This was to be a marriage of convenience, nothing more. Yet already, the boundary seemed less clear than she had imagined. What she didn't see was Sebastian watching from the window, his expression troubled as a letter arrived from India, a letter bearing a seal he had hoped never to see again. The wedding of the Duke of Thornfield and Lady Julia Whitmore was a surprisingly subdued affair, held in the family chapel at Thornfield Estate rather than in London as might have been expected. Only close family and a few select friends were in attendance, much to the disappointment of society gossips who had hoped for a spectacle. Julia stood before the altar in a gown of ivory silk, adorned not with the ostentatious finery her father had pushed for, but with simple pearl embroidery and her mother's lace veil. Sebastian waited for her, resplendent in formal attire, his face an inscrutable mask that revealed nothing of his thoughts. As they exchanged vows, Julia searched his eyes for some sign of the man beneath the ducal facade. For an instant, as he slipped the ring onto her finger, a magnificent sapphire surrounded by diamonds, she thought she glimpsed something vulnerable in his gaze. But it vanished so quickly she might have imagined it. I now pronounce you man and wife, intoned the vicar. Your Grace, you may kiss your bride. Sebastian leaned forward, his lips brushing hers with unexpected gentleness. It was the barest touch, yet Julia felt it to her core, a warmth spreading through her that had nothing to do with the spring sunshine filtering through the stained glass windows. The wedding breakfast that followed was elegant but brief. Julia noticed that Sebastian seemed distracted, his attention repeatedly drawn to a man standing at the periphery of the gathering, a dark-complexioned gentleman whose exotic appearance suggested foreign origins. "Who is that man?" she asked, when they were momentarily alone. Sebastian's jaw tightened. "An associate from my days in India. Rajiv Singh. His presence here is unexpected." "Is something wrong?" "Nothing for you to concern yourself with." His tone was dismissive, a reminder of the boundaries between them despite their newlywed status. Julia felt a flash of irritation. "I am your wife now, Sebastian. If there are matters that might affect our household, our arrangement does not entitle you to all my confidences," he interrupted, his voice low but firm. "There are aspects of my life that must remain separate from our marriage." Before she could respond, they were surrounded once more by well-wishers, and the moment for confrontation passed. But as they departed for Thornfield's country estate in Hampshire, where they would spend a quiet honeymoon away from London's prying eyes, Julia could not shake the feeling that her husband carried a burden far heavier than he had revealed. The journey passed largely in silence, Sebastian absorbed in documents from his portfolio while Julia gazed out at the passing countryside. When they finally arrived at Thornfield Manor, a magnificent Elizabethan house set amidst ancient oaks and formal gardens, twilight was settling over the land. "Welcome to your new home, Duchess," Sebastian said, helping her from the carriage. "It's beautiful," she breathed, taking in the honey-colored stone glowing in the last light of day. "It has been in my family for generations. I spent little time here as a boy. My father preferred London, but I've always felt it was the true heart of the Thornfield estate." It was the most personal thing he had shared with her, and Julia treasured it like a gift. "Thank you for bringing me here first, rather than to the London house." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "I thought you might prefer to grow accustomed to your new role away from society's scrutiny." The elderly butler greeted them with formal dignity, introducing himself as Giles, who had served the Jarrett family for over 40 years. He led them through the grand entrance hall with its sweeping staircase and ancestral portraits, to a drawing room where a light supper awaited. "I've taken the liberty of having your things unpacked, Your Grace," Giles informed Julia. "Mrs. Winters, the housekeeper, has prepared the Duchess's suite according to His Grace's instructions." "Thank you, Giles," Sebastian said. "That will be all for tonight." When they were alone, an awkward silence fell between them. The reality of their wedding night loomed, unspoken but impossible to ignore. Sebastian broke the tension, setting down his wine glass. "You need not be concerned. I meant what I said about the nature of our arrangement." Relief and, strangely, disappointment mingled in Julia's breast. "I appreciate your consideration. Your suite connects to mine through a shared sitting room," he continued, his tone businesslike. "Should you need anything, you need only ring for your lady's maid. I've hired a woman named Martha Collins who comes highly recommended." "When do you expect?" Julia faltered, embarrassed yet determined to be clear. "That is, regarding an heir. Not until we've had time to establish a comfortable companionship." His dark eyes held hers steadily. "I may have married for practical reasons, Julia, but I am not a monster who would force himself upon an unwilling wife." She flushed. "I never thought you were." "Didn't you?" "The rumors about me are hardly flattering. I prefer to form my own judgments based on a person's actions, not idle gossip." Something like respect flickered in his gaze. A rare quality. He rose from his chair, tall and imposing in the firelight. "It's been a long day. I'll bid you good night." As he bowed over her hand, his lips just brushing her knuckles, Julia felt again that inexplicable current between them. "Good night, Sebastian." Later, alone in her magnificent suite with its canopied bed and silk hangings, Julia stood at the window gazing out at the moonlit gardens. She was now a duchess, mistress of this grand estate and several others, financially secure beyond her wildest dreams. Yet as she watched a solitary figure walking the paths below, Sebastian, his head bowed as though under an invisible weight, she wondered what price would ultimately be demanded for her newfound freedom. The first weeks of their marriage established a pattern of polite distance. Sebastian spent his days managing his extensive business affairs from his study, while Julia explored the estate and began to assume the responsibilities of her position. They dined together each evening, their conversation gradually becoming less strained as they discovered shared interests in literature and music. On her third week at Thornfield Manor, Julia was reviewing household accounts with Mrs. Winters when a commotion in the entrance hall drew their attention. "It appears we have an unexpected visitor, Your Grace," the housekeeper remarked, peering through the door. Julia rose and made her way to the hall, where she found Giles attempting to prevent a flamboyantly dressed young woman from proceeding further into the house. "I insist on seeing Sebastian immediately," the woman was declaring, tossing her blonde ringlets with dramatic flair. "His Grace is occupied, Miss Fairchild, and not receiving visitors," Giles replied firmly. "Nonsense. He'll see me. He always does." Julia stepped forward. "Perhaps I might be of assistance." Both Giles and the visitor turned, the butler looking relieved, the young woman's eyes widening in surprise. "Your Grace," Giles bowed. "May I present Miss Eliza Fairchild, an acquaintance of His Grace?" "You must be the new Duchess," Eliza said, sweeping a curtsy that somehow managed to convey insolence rather than respect. How utterly fascinating. Sebastian never mentioned he was considering marriage. "I don't believe we've had the pleasure, Miss Fairchild," Julia replied coolly, recognizing the woman's type immediately, a former mistress, likely discarded when Sebastian decided to marry. "Oh, Sebastian and I are old friends," Eliza purred. "Very old, very intimate friends. I was most distressed to hear of his sudden nuptials. So unlike him to act impulsively." Before Julia could respond, Sebastian's voice cut through the tension. "Eliza! This is an unexpected surprise." He stood at the entrance to the corridor leading to his study, his expression carefully neutral, though Julia detected a hint of annoyance in the set of his jaw. "Sebastian, darling!" Eliza rushed toward him, only to stop short when he made no move to embrace her. "Aren't you pleased to see me?" "I'm rather occupied at present," he replied. "Had you sent word of your visit, I might have arranged my schedule accordingly." Eliza pouted. "Since when do I need an invitation to call on you? Besides, I simply had to meet your bride." She turned her gaze back to Julia, assessing her with undisguised curiosity. "Though I confess, you're not at all what I expected." "Life is full of surprises, Miss Fairchild," Julia said evenly. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have matters to attend to. Sebastian, perhaps you'd like to entertain your guest in the blue drawing room? I'll have tea sent in." She departed with dignity, though her heart was pounding. The woman's familiar manner with her husband had been a sharp reminder that Sebastian had a past, and possibly a present, about which she knew very little. An hour later, as Julia was arranging flowers in the conservatory, Sebastian found her. "I apologize for Eliza's intrusion," he said without preamble. "She has been dealt with and won't trouble us again." "There's no need to apologize. I understand you had a life before our marriage." He studied her face. "You're angry?" "No," she replied honestly. "Perhaps a little discomforted." She spoke as though your relationship was ongoing. "It was not. It ended months ago, well before our arrangement was made." Julia nodded, focusing on trimming a rose stem rather than meeting his eyes. "You needn't explain yourself to me. Our agreement doesn't preclude you from seeking companionship elsewhere." Sebastian's hand suddenly covered hers, stilling her movements. "Look at me, Julia." Reluctantly, she raised her gaze to his. "I made you a promise of fidelity, and I keep my promises. Always." His eyes burned with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Eliza Fairchild means nothing to me. She never did. She was a diversion, nothing more." "And what am I?" The question escaped before Julia could stop it. Something shifted in his expression, a softening, a vulnerability quickly masked. "You are my wife. The Duchess of Thornfield. And deserving of far better than you've been given." He released her hand and stepped back, the moment of intimacy broken. I'm leaving for London tomorrow on business. I expect to be gone a week, perhaps 2. I see, Julia said, surprised at the disappointment that flooded her. Is this business related to your visitor from India? Mr. Singh? Sebastian's expression closed like a door slamming shut. My business in London is my own concern. Of course. Forgive my presumption. He sighed, running a hand through his dark hair, a rare gesture of frustration that humanized him. Julia, there are matters in my past that are complicated. Dangerous, even. The less you know, the safer you are. I'm not afraid. You should be. His voice was grim. I have enemies, people who would use any means to destroy me, including harming those associated with me. She lifted her chin. Then perhaps you should have considered that before making me your Duchess. For a moment, he looked stricken. Then his expression hardened once more. Perhaps I should have. He left her standing amid the flowers, confusion and hurt warring within her breast. Just when she thought they were building a foundation of mutual respect, if not affection, he withdrew behind his walls, leaving her to wonder if they would ever truly be husband and wife in anything but name. That night, as Julia prepared for bed, her lady's maid Martha handed her a sealed note. From His Grace, Your Grace. Inside was a brief message, * forgive my abruptness. The carriage will be at your disposal during my absence. Should you wish to invite your sisters to visit, please do so. The London house staff will be instructed to accommodate you should you desire a change of scenery. It was hardly a romantic overture, yet Julia found herself touching the paper as though it might reveal more of the man who had written it. There was consideration in his words, an attempt at amends that spoke of more care than he was willing to express directly. When Sebastian departed early the next morning, Julia watched from her window as his carriage rolled down the long drive. Something told her that his journey to London involved more than routine business, and that the shadows from his past were drawing closer, threatening the fragile peace they had begun to build. What she didn't know was that in his luggage, Sebastian carried a dagger with a jeweled hilt, a dagger that had once been plunged into the heart of a man whose death had changed the course of his life forever. 2 weeks passed with no word from Sebastian. Julia settled into the rhythm of managing Thornfield Manor, winning the respect of the staff with her fair-minded approach and genuine interest in their welfare. She had invited her youngest sister, Charlotte, to visit, finding comfort in the girl's cheerful presence. It's like something from a fairy tale, Charlotte exclaimed as they walked through the rose gardens. My sister, a duchess! And married to such a handsome, mysterious duke. Julia smiled indulgently. Life is rarely as romantic as your novels suggest, Charlie. Perhaps not, but surely you must admit there's something thrillingly Byronic about the Duke. The rumors about his time in India, the fortune amassed under shadowy circumstances, his reputation with women. Charlotte sighed dreamily. And now he's chosen you above all others. He chose me for practical reasons, Julia corrected gently. Our marriage is an arrangement of mutual benefit. Charlotte stopped, her youthful face suddenly serious. Do you mean he doesn't love you? Or you him? Love rarely factors into marriages of our class, you know that. But surely, living together, you must have developed some affection. Julia considered her sister's question honestly. What did she feel for Sebastian? Curiosity, certainly. Respect for his intelligence and business acumen. Attraction, she couldn't deny the way her pulse quickened when he entered a room. But love? How could one love a man who revealed so little of himself? It's complicated, she finally said. Sebastian is not an easy man to know. Before Charlotte could press further, they were interrupted by the arrival of Giles, who hurried across the lawn with uncharacteristic haste. Your Grace, a telegram has arrived from London. From His Grace's solicitor. Julia's heart lurched. Is something wrong? Is Sebastian, the message doesn't say, Your Grace. Only that you should come to London immediately. A carriage has been arranged. Fear clutched at Julia's throat. Thank you, Giles. Please have Martha pack my things. We'll leave within the hour. As she rushed to prepare for the journey, Julia's mind raced with terrible possibilities. Had Sebastian been injured? Killed? Was he ill? The telegram's urgency suggested disaster, and she was surprised by the depth of her distress at the thought of harm coming to him. The journey to London seemed interminable, though the driver pushed the horses to their limits. Charlotte, who had insisted on accompanying her sister, held Julia's hand as the carriage rattled over rough roads. "I'm sure he's fine," Charlotte said, though her young face betrayed her own worry. "Perhaps it's merely some legal matter that requires your signature." "Perhaps," Julia agreed, not believing it for a moment. They arrived at Thornfield House in Mayfair well after midnight. The butler, Thompson, greeted them with a grim expression that did nothing to allay Julia's fears. "Where is my husband?" she demanded, still wearing her travelling cloak. "In his study, Your Grace. With Mr. Gladwell and another gentleman." "Is he hurt?" "Not physically, Your Grace." Thompson's cryptic answer only increased her anxiety. Julia handed her cloak to a footman and made her way to Sebastian's study, Charlotte following close behind. At the door, she paused, gathering her courage before knocking firmly. "Enter," came Sebastian's voice, sounding exhausted. She opened the door to find a scene of tense conference. Sebastian stood by the fireplace, his face haggard, a glass of brandy in his hand. Mr. Gladwell, the family solicitor, sat at the desk surrounded by papers. And in a chair by the window sat Rajiv Singh, the Indian gentleman from their wedding. "Julia," Sebastian said, surprise evident in his tone. "What are you doing here?" "I received an urgent telegram summoning me to London." She looked from face to face. "What has happened?" The men exchanged glances, and it was Mr. Gladwell who finally spoke. "Your Grace, I sent no telegram." A chill ran down Julia's spine. "But Giles said—" "Giles is at Thornfield Manor," Sebastian interrupted, suddenly alert. "Who delivered this telegram?" "A boy. I didn't recognize him." Julia's voice faltered as the implications became clear. "Sebastian, what's going on?" He crossed to her in 3 long strides, taking her by the shoulders. "Listen to me carefully. You and your sister are in danger. We all are. You need to leave London immediately." "Not until you explain," she insisted, finding courage in her growing indignation. "I am your wife. Whatever threatens you, threatens me. I deserve to know." For a long moment, Sebastian stared at her, conflict evident in his dark eyes. Then he turned to Rajiv. "Tell her." The Indian gentleman rose, his dignified bearing at odds with the gravity of his expression. "Your husband saved my life in Calcutta many years ago. In doing so, he made a powerful enemy, a man named William Carstairs." "The East India Company director?" Julia asked, recognizing the name. "The same," Sebastian confirmed. "Carstairs was involved in illegal activities, opium smuggling, arms dealing with rebellious factions, extortion. I discovered his operation and gathered evidence against him. Evidence that led to his disgrace and imprisonment," Rajiv continued. "He swore vengeance on the Duke. He was transported to Australia for his crimes 5 years ago. And now he's back," Sebastian said grimly. "Released early for good behavior and returned to England 3 months ago. The telegram that brought you here was his doing, a way to draw you into his reach." Julia felt Charlotte's hand slip into hers, seeking reassurance. "What does he want?" "To destroy everything I value before killing me," Sebastian answered bluntly. His letter made that quite clear. "Letter?" Julia's voice rose. "You received a threat and didn't think to warn me. I thought I could handle it. I thought—" He ran a hand through his disheveled hair. "I thought I could protect you by keeping you at a distance." "Well, that plan has clearly failed," she retorted, fear making her sharp. "Now what do we do?" Something like admiration flickered in Sebastian's eyes. "Now we get you and Charlotte somewhere safe, while I deal with Carstairs." "No," Julia stated firmly. "I won't be sent away like a child." If this man threatened your family, threatened me, then I have every right to be part of resolving the situation. Sebastian opened his mouth to argue, then closed it, studying her with new consideration. You continue to surprise me, Duchess. Good. Now tell me everything, and let us make a plan together. As dawn broke over London, the four of them, Sebastian, Julia, Rajiv, and Mr. Gladwell, had formulated a strategy. Charlotte had fallen asleep on a chaise in the corner, a young face peaceful despite the danger surrounding them. It's risky, Mr. Gladwell cautioned. If anything goes wrong. It won't, Sebastian said with quiet determination. Carstairs is expecting me to react with fear, to hide my wife away. He won't anticipate this approach. Julia, exhausted but resolute, placed her hand over her husband's. We face this together. For the first time since their marriage, Sebastian entwined his fingers with hers, the gesture more intimate than any they had shared before. Together, he agreed. As Rajiv and Mr. Gladwell departed to set the plan in motion, Sebastian drew Julia to the window, where the first light of day was breaking over the rooftops of London. I've done you a disservice, he said softly. Marrying you without revealing the dangers that shadow me. Would you have made a different choice, knowing what you know now? He looked down at her, his expression more open than she had ever seen it. No, he admitted. But perhaps for different reasons than when I first proposed our arrangement. Before Julia could ask what he meant, Charlotte stirred, and the moment passed. But something had shifted between them, a new understanding, a deepening connection forged in crisis. What neither of them knew was that William Carstairs was already closer than they realized, his plan for vengeance more elaborate and deadly than even Sebastian had imagined. The annual midsummer ball at the Marquis of Halford's country estate was the social event of the season. The cream of society gathered in their finest attire, eager to see and be seen, to dance and gossip and forge alliances beneath the crystal chandeliers of Halford Hall. It was here that the Duke and Duchess of Thornfield made their first public appearance since their wedding, causing a sensation as they entered the ballroom. Sebastian, imposing in formal black evening wear, and Julia, radiant in a gown of midnight blue silk that set off her auburn hair to perfection, drew every eye. They make a striking couple, observed Lady Harrington to her companion. Though I still cannot fathom what prompted such a hasty match. Perhaps she trapped him somehow, suggested Mrs. Pembroke. She certainly seems to have him wrapped around her finger now. Look how attentive he is. Indeed, Sebastian's hand rested protectively at the small of Julia's back as he guided her through the crowd, his dark gaze sweeping the room with watchful intensity even as he maintained a facade of aristocratic ease. Remember, he murmured for Julia's ears alone, Carstairs may have agents here. We must appear completely at ease. I haven't forgotten, she replied, smiling brilliantly as they were approached by the Marquis and his wife. Thornfield. And the new Duchess, enchanting, simply enchanting, the Marquis declared, bowing over Julia's hand. You must allow me to claim your wife for a dance later, Sebastian. Of course, Halford, though I shall be counting the minutes until her return, Sebastian replied with a charm that Julia had rarely witnessed. As the evening progressed, they executed their plan with flawless precision. They separated briefly, Julia dancing with selected partners while Sebastian engaged in conversation with various gentlemen, casually dropping hints about a valuable shipment arriving from India the following week, bait for Carstairs' spies. During a lull in the dancing, Julia found herself near the terrace doors, sipping champagne and observing the crowd. A gentleman she didn't recognize approached, middle-aged, expensively but not tastefully dressed, with cold eyes that belied his solicitous smile. Duchess of Thornfield, he bowed. May I offer my congratulations on your marriage? Rather a whirlwind romance, I understand. Thank you, Mr. Chambers. Edward Chambers. A business associate of your husband's, from his days in India. Julia's pulse quickened, though she maintained her composed expression. This could be one of Carstairs' men, or possibly Carstairs himself, though Sebastian had described him as older, with a distinctive scar. How lovely to meet you, Mr. Chambers. Are you enjoying the ball? Immensely, now that I've had the pleasure of your acquaintance. He moved slightly closer. Your husband is a fortunate man. I wonder if he truly appreciates what he has. I assure you, my husband and I hold each other in the highest regard, Julia replied coolly. Indeed? How gratifying. His smile didn't reach his eyes. One hears such rumors about marriages of convenience, arrangements made for financial or social advantage rather than affection. Julia stiffened. I'm not sure what you're implying, sir, but I imply nothing, Duchess. I merely observe. And what I observe is a beautiful young woman bound to a man with a dark past and an uncertain future. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. Should you ever find yourself in need of alternative arrangements, there are those who would be most eager to assist you. Before Julia could respond to this outrageous suggestion, Sebastian appeared at her side, his expression pleasant but his eyes dangerous. Chambers, he said, his voice deceptively light. I wasn't aware you had returned to England. Thornfield. The man straightened. Just recently arrived. I was just becoming acquainted with your charming Duchess. So I see. Sebastian placed a possessive hand at Julia's waist. My dear, I believe they're forming a set for the quadrille. Shall we? As he led her away, Julia whispered, Who is that man, really? Vincent Mayhew. Carstairs' right-hand man in India. His presence here confirms our suspicions. Carstairs received our bait and is mobilizing his resources. He was quite forward. Sebastian's jaw tightened. What did he say to you? He implied our marriage was one of convenience and offered his assistance should I find myself dissatisfied. A muscle worked in Sebastian's cheek. I should call him out for that alone. That would hardly serve our purpose, she reminded him. Besides, his insinuations weren't entirely without foundation, were they? Sebastian stopped at the edge of the dance floor, turning to face her. Our beginning may have been unconventional, Julia, but don't imagine that means I don't, he broke off, seeming to catch himself. That I don't value and respect you as my wife. Something in his eyes made her heart flutter. Sebastian, Duke and Duchess of Thornfield. The announcement of their names for the quadrille interrupted whatever he had been about to say. Please take your places. As they moved through the intricate patterns of the dance, Julia found herself wondering what Sebastian had truly meant to say. The way he looked at her had changed in recent days, as though he were seeing her anew, discovering something unexpected in the woman he had married for convenience. Later that night, as their carriage rolled back toward London, Sebastian and Julia sat in companionable silence, the events of the evening hanging between them. The trap is set, he finally said. Carstairs will move on the false shipment within the week. And we'll be ready for him, Julia affirmed. Though I confess, I'll be glad when this is over. Sebastian reached across the carriage to take her hand, a gesture that had become more natural between them since the night she'd arrived in London. As will I. You've shown remarkable courage through all of this. I've had little choice, she said with a small smile. Though I admit, it's not the married life I anticipated. No, he agreed, his thumb tracing circles on her palm in a way that sent shivers up her arm. It's not what either of us anticipated, I think. The carriage hit a rough patch of road, jolting them closer together. In the dim light, Sebastian's face was inches from hers, his eyes dark with an emotion Julia couldn't name. Julia, he said softly, his voice deeper than usual. I need to tell you, the carriage lurched violently, then began to tip. Julia screamed as she was thrown against the side, Sebastian's arms coming around her protectively as they crashed over. Glass shattered. Wood splintered. And then darkness claimed her. Julia awoke to pain and confusion. Her head throbbed, and something warm and sticky trickled down her temple. She was lying on what felt like a stone floor, cold and damp against her cheek. Memories flooded back, the ball, the carriage ride, Sebastian's intense gaze just before. Sebastian, she gasped, struggling to sit up. He's not here, I'm afraid, came a cultured voice from the shadows. Though he'll be joining us soon enough, if he survived the accident. A figure moved into the dim light cast by a single lantern, an older man with silver hair and aristocratic features marred by a jagged scar that ran from temple to jaw. "William Carstairs," Julia whispered, recognizing him from Sebastian's description. "The Duchess remembers her lessons." "How gratifying." He smiled, a chilling expression devoid of warmth. "Welcome to my humble abode. Not quite up to the standards of Thornfield House, I grant you, but serviceable for our purposes." Julia struggled to her feet, ignoring the dizziness that threatened to overwhelm her. She was in some sort of cellar or warehouse, the walls of rough stone, the air heavy with the smell of the river. Her beautiful ball gown was torn and soiled, one sleeve hanging by threads. "What do you want with me?" she demanded, summoning all her courage. "You? Nothing at all, my dear. You're merely the bait." Carstairs circled her slowly, appraising. "Though I can see why Jarrett chose you. Beauty, spirit, a vast improvement over his previous taste in women." Julia backed away, bumping into a stack of crates. "If you think harming me will hurt Sebastian, you're mistaken. Ours is a marriage of convenience, nothing more." Carstairs laughed, the sound echoing off the stone walls. "Is that what he told you? That he married you for convenience?" He shook his head. "My dear Duchess, your husband has been watching you for months. Did you never wonder how he happened to be at Winchester Hall that night? How he knew so much about your family's circumstances?" Julia's heart raced. "What are you talking about?" "Sebastian Jarrett doesn't leave matters to chance. He researched you thoroughly before orchestrating your chance our meeting. Your father's debts, Lord Penworth's interest, your midnight wanderings, all known to him before he ever spoke a word to you." "You're lying," Julia whispered, though doubt crept into her mind. How had Sebastian known so much about her that night? "Am I?" "Think, Duchess. A man like Jarrett, with his wealth and position, could have had any woman in London. Yet he chose the daughter of a debt-ridden baron, a girl with no particular connections or extraordinary dowry." Carstairs leaned closer. "He wanted you. Only you. Though I doubt even he understood why." Julia's mind reeled. Could it be true? Had Sebastian orchestrated their meeting, their marriage? But why? "Even if what you say is true, it changes nothing," she said, lifting her chin defiantly. "Sebastian will come for me, and when he does, he'll find me waiting," Carstairs finished. "And he'll face a choice, your life, or the evidence he's been gathering against me since my return to England." "Evidence?" "Of my new enterprises. Quite lucrative, quite illegal, and quite enough to send me back to the colonies for life." Carstairs checked his pocket watch. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have preparations to make for your husband's arrival. Mayhew will keep you company." Vincent Mayhew, the man from the ball, stepped from the shadows, a pistol in his hand. "Don't try anything foolish, Duchess. I'd hate to damage such a pretty face before Jarrett arrives." As Carstairs departed, Julia sank onto a crate, her mind working furiously. Sebastian would indeed come for her, of that she had no doubt. But he would be walking into a trap, and she needed to find a way to warn him or help him. She glanced around the cellar, noting possible weapons, exits, anything that might aid in escape. Mayhew watched her with amusement. "Planning your escape? Don't waste your energy. No one leaves here without Carstairs' permission." "How did you do it?" she asked, trying to distract him. "The carriage accident." Mayhew smiled. "Simple enough. A rope across the road, pull tight at the right moment. Classic highwayman's trick." "And the driver?" "The footman. Unfortunate casualties." He shrugged. "Business is business." Julia swallowed her horror. "And what business is that, exactly? What could be worth all this death and destruction?" "Revenge, primarily. Though there's also the matter of £5 million that Jarrett cost Carstairs in India." Mayhew leaned against the wall, relaxing slightly. "Your husband has quite the talent for making enemies." So it seems, Julia murmured, her eyes falling on a heavy iron poker leaning against a small stove in the corner. If she could just get closer to it. She stood, swaying slightly. I feel faint. Is there any water? Mayhew hesitated, then gestured to a pitcher on a small table. There. Don't try anything. Julia moved carefully toward the table, intentionally stumbling as she passed the stove. Her hand closed around the poker as she fell to her knees. I told you not to, Mayhew's words cut off as Julia swung the poker with all her strength, catching him in the side of the knee. He howled in pain, the pistol firing wildly as he collapsed. Julia scrambled away, but not before a searing pain tore through her upper arm. The bullet had grazed her, but she had no time to assess the damage. Mayhew was struggling to rise, cursing violently. Julia swung the poker again, this time connecting with his head. He crumpled to the ground, unconscious or worse, she didn't stay to find out. The cellar door was locked, but a narrow window high on one wall offered possible escape. Dragging a crate beneath it, Julia climbed up and pushed at the rusted iron grate covering the opening. It gave way with a groan, falling into what appeared to be an alley. With strength born of desperation, Julia pulled herself through the opening, tearing her gown further and scraping her arms and legs on the rough stone. She tumbled onto damp cobblestones, the night air cold against her face. She was in London's docklands, she realized, a maze of warehouses and wharves along the Thames. In the distance, she could hear shouting, Carstairs men, no doubt, alerted by the gunshot. Gathering her torn skirts, Julia ran blindly into the night, with no idea where to find help or how to warn Sebastian of the trap laid for him. All she knew was that somehow she had to reach him before Carstairs did, before the man she had married for convenience, but had come to care for far more deeply, walked willingly to his death. Sebastian Jarrett moved silently through the fog-shrouded docks, a pistol in one hand, a knife sheathed at his belt. Behind him, Rajiv Singh and two trusted men from Sebastian's days in India fanned out, watching for signs of Carstairs' men. The carriage attack had been anticipated, a contingency they had planned for, but the separation from Julia had not been. Sebastian had regained consciousness in a ditch beside the overturned carriage, his driver dead and Julia gone. The message left pinned to the carriage door had been explicit, come alone to Warehouse 17 at midnight, or the Duchess dies. Of course, Sebastian had no intention of coming alone or unarmed. But the fear that gripped his heart as he thought of Julia in Carstairs' hands was something he hadn't experienced since India. Since Amora. The warehouse is ahead, Rajiv whispered, materializing beside him. There are guards at both entrances. And Julia? No sign of her yet. But there is movement inside, at least 5 men, perhaps more. Sebastian nodded grimly. Remember, Carstairs is mine. The rest of you focus on finding and protecting the Duchess. And if she is not there, then we make Carstairs tell us where she is. Sebastian's voice was cold as steel. By whatever means necessary. As they prepared to advance, a commotion erupted from a narrow alley to their left, shouts, the sound of running feet, and then a woman's scream. Sebastian's blood froze. Julia, he breathed, already moving toward the sound. He rounded the corner in time to see 2 rough-looking men cornering a bedraggled figure against a brick wall, a woman in the tattered remains of an evening gown, her hair wild, blood staining one sleeve. Julia, he shouted, raising his pistol. The men turned, reaching for their own weapons, but they were too slow. Sebastian fired twice in rapid succession, dropping them both before they could aim. Julia sagged against the wall, her face pale in the dim light. Sebastian, she gasped. It's a trap. Carstairs knows you're coming. He wants, I know, he interrupted, reaching her in 3 long strides and gathering her into his arms. Are you hurt? Just a graze. She winced as his hand brushed her injured arm. But Mayhew, I hit him with a poker. I think I might have killed him. Sebastian's expression hardened. Good. 1 less of Carstairs' dogs to deal with. He examined her wound quickly, relief washing over him when he confirmed it was indeed just a graze. Can you walk? We need to get you somewhere safe. I'm not leaving you, she insisted, her green eyes fierce despite her exhaustion. Carstairs has evidence of your activities in India, evidence he plans to use against you if you don't surrender whatever proof you've gathered of his current operations. Let him try, Sebastian said grimly. I have nothing to hide, and not anymore. He turned to Rajiv. Get her to safety. Take her to Gladwell's house, no one will look for her there. No, Julia clutched his arm. Sebastian, listen to me. Carstairs told me things about us, about our marriage. He said you'd been watching me before we ever met, that you orchestrated everything. Sebastian went still, his face unreadable in the shadows. Julia, this isn't the time, it's true, isn't it? She pressed. That night at Winchester Hall, it wasn't chance that brought you there. For a long moment, he was silent, the sounds of the docks, creaking ships, lapping water, distant shouts, filling the space between them. Finally, he sighed. No, it wasn't chance. I had been aware of you for some time. Your father's gambling debts, Penworth's interest, I knew it all. But why? Julia's voice trembled. Why me? Sebastian's hand came up to cup her cheek, his touch gentle despite the urgency of their situation. Because from the moment I saw you, months before at Lady Harrington's musical evening, I couldn't look away. You were like no one I'd ever known, genuine in a world of artifice, kind in a society that rewards cruelty. You never said anything. How could I? My life was too dangerous, too burdened by the past. I had no right to draw you into it. His thumb brushed across her cheek. But when I learned of your father's plans to marry you to Penworth, I couldn't stand by and watch. The marriage of convenience was the only solution I could offer that wouldn't expose you to greater risk. Julia's heart raced at his confession. So all this time. A shout from the direction of the warehouse interrupted them. They've discovered the guards, Rajiv warned. We must move now. Sebastian's expression shifted back to grim determination. Get her out of here, he ordered Rajiv. No arguments, Julia. I can't face Carstairs if I'm worried about your safety. And I can't leave not knowing if you'll return, she countered. You owe me that much, Sebastian. After everything, you owe me the truth about what happened in India, about why you believe you can't love again. For a heartbeat, the world seemed to stop. Then Sebastian pulled her close, his lips finding hers in a kiss that contained all the passion and tenderness he had kept locked away. When he drew back, his eyes held hers with fierce intensity. I never said I couldn't love again, he whispered. I said my heart wasn't mine to give. Because it already belonged to you, almost from the first moment I saw you. Before Julia could respond, gunfire erupted from the warehouse. Sebastian thrust her toward Rajiv. Go. Please. Let me end this so we can begin. This time, Julia didn't resist. Come back to me, she said, touching his face one last time. Whatever happens, whatever you've done, come back to me. I swear it, he vowed, and then he was gone, disappearing into the fog with his men, heading toward the final confrontation with the man who had haunted him across continents and years. Rajiv led Julia away from the docks, but she couldn't help looking back, her heart torn between fear for the man she now knew she loved, and hope for the future he had promised with his kiss. William Carstairs waited in the cavernous warehouse, surrounded by crates of contraband and the half-dozen men who remained loyal to him after his fall from grace. The pistol in his hand was aimed at the main entrance, his scarred face twisted in anticipation. He's taking his time, Mayhew growled, holding a blood-soaked handkerchief to his head where Julia had struck him. Perhaps he doesn't value his Duchess as much as we thought. Oh, he'll come, Carstairs said confidently. Jarrett's one predictable weakness has always been his misplaced sense of honor. As if summoned by his words, the warehouse door creaked open. A lone figure stood silhouetted against the foggy night, tall, imposing, unarmed. Jarrett, Carstairs called. How good of you to join us. Sebastian stepped into the warehouse, his hands visible at his sides. Carstairs. I see prison hasn't improved your sense of hospitality. Where are your men? I know you didn't come alone. Close enough. Sebastian's gaze swept the warehouse. Where is my wife? Carstairs laughed. Ah, yes, the lovely Duchess. I'm afraid she's indisposed at the moment. Mayhew shifted uncomfortably. Sir, about the Duchess, not now. Mayhew, Carstairs snapped. We have business to discuss, Jarrett. A simple exchange, the evidence you've gathered against my current enterprises for your life and that of your wife. Sebastian's expression remained impassive. You seem to be operating under a misconception, Carstairs. I haven't been gathering evidence against you. Come now, don't insult my intelligence. I know you've been investigating me since my return to England. No, I've been investigating your associates, the men you corrupted in the East India Company, the officials you bribed to secure your early release. Your own activities have been of little interest to me. Carstairs frowned, uncertainty crossing his features for the first time. You expect me to believe that? After what happened in Calcutta? What happened in Calcutta was 5 years ago. I've moved on. Sebastian took a step forward. But since you've chosen to resurrect the past by threatening my wife, I'll give you one chance to end this. Surrender now, and I'll ensure you're treated fairly. Laughter erupted from Carstairs and his men. You're in no position to make demands, Jarrett. In case you hadn't noticed, you're outnumbered and unarmed. Am I? Sebastian smiled thinly. At that moment, the skylight above shattered. Rajiv and Sebastian's men dropped into the warehouse, weapons raised. Simultaneously, the side door burst open, revealing a contingent of uniformed police officers led by a stern-faced inspector. William Carstairs, the inspector announced, you're under arrest for the attempted murder of the Duke and Duchess of Thornfield, the murder of their driver, smuggling, extortion, and conspiracy against the Crown. Chaos erupted. Carstairs' men, seeing themselves surrounded, mostly surrendered without resistance. Mayhew made a desperate attempt to flee but was quickly subdued by 2 officers. Carstairs himself stood frozen, his face contorted with rage. This isn't over, Jarrett, he snarled. I still have the letters, your letters to Amora. One word from me, and your precious reputation, your marriage, everything you've built will crumble. For the first time, Sebastian's composure faltered. Amora has nothing to do with this. Doesn't she? The woman you loved and lost in India? The native girl whose death you blame yourself for? Carstairs' voice rose in triumph. Does your Duchess know about her? About how you failed to protect the last woman you loved? Sebastian moved with lightning speed, his hand closing around Carstairs' throat. Speak her name again, and I'll end this myself. Your Grace, the inspector called sharply. We have him now. Justice will be served. For a moment, it seemed Sebastian might not listen. Then, slowly, he released Carstairs, who collapsed gasping to his knees. You're right, Inspector, Sebastian said, his voice cold. Justice will be served. For Amora, and for everyone else whose lives this man has destroyed. As the police led Carstairs and his men away, Sebastian stood alone in the center of the warehouse, the weight of the past and present heavy on his shoulders. The secret he had kept buried for so long had been dragged into the light. Now he would have to face Julia with the full truth, about India, about Amora, and about the guilt that had kept him from embracing the love that had grown between them. Julia waited in the library of Thornfield House, pacing before the fire as the grandfather clock ticked away the hours. Rajiv had brought her here after Sebastian's men and the police had converged on the warehouse, assuring her that all would be well. But as dawn approached with no word, her anxiety grew unbearable. When the front door finally opened, she rushed into the entrance hall to find Sebastian standing there, his clothes disheveled, his face drawn with exhaustion but otherwise unharmed. Sebastian, she breathed, relief washing over her. He looked up, his eyes filling with an emotion too complex to name when they met hers. Julia. You should be resting. How could I rest not knowing if you were safe? She moved toward him, stopping just short of embracing him. "Is it over?" Carstairs. "Arrested, along with his men. They'll stand trial, though given the evidence against them, the outcome is certain." He removed his coat, handing it to the waiting butler. "You should have your arm seen to." "It's nothing, Martha helped me clean and bandage it." Julia studied his face, sensing his withdrawal despite his apparent concern. "What is it? What's wrong?" Sebastian glanced at the hovering servants. "Not here. In the library." Once they were alone, he poured himself a brandy, downing it in one swallow before turning to face her. "Carstairs said something about India. About my past." "Amora," Julia said softly. "He mentioned someone named Amora." Sebastian flinched as though she had struck him. "Yes." "Who was she, Sebastian?" He moved to the window, staring out at the lightening sky. "She was the daughter of a local ruler in Bengal, a man who opposed the East India Company's exploitative practices. I was sent to negotiate with him, but instead—" He paused, the memory clearly painful. "Instead, I fell in love with Amora. And she with me." Julia's heart constricted, but she kept her voice steady. "What happened?" "Carstairs discovered our relationship. He used it to blackmail her father, threatening to expose Amora to scandal if he didn't cooperate with the company's demands. When her father still refused, Carstairs took more direct action." Sebastian's knuckles whitened on the windowsill. He arranged for Amora to be kidnapped, intending to use her as leverage. "Dear God," Julia whispered. "I tried to save her. I gathered men I trusted, tracked them to Carstairs' compound. But I was too late." His voice broke. "They had hurt her badly. She died in my arms." Julia crossed to him, placing her hand gently on his back. "Sebastian, I'm so sorry. I spent the next year gathering evidence of Carstairs' crimes, not just against Amora, but against dozens of local families, against the company itself. When I had enough, I brought him down." Sebastian turned to face her, his eyes haunted. "But Amora was still gone. And I had failed her." "You didn't fail her," Julia said firmly. "You brought her killer to justice. Not before he took everything from me." Sebastian's hand came up to touch her cheek. "When I returned to England and took up the dukedom after my brother's death, I vowed never to let anyone close enough to be used against me again. Until I saw you." Julia leaned into his touch. "Is that why you kept me at arm's length? Why you insisted our marriage was merely an arrangement?" "Yes," he admitted. "I thought if I didn't acknowledge my feelings, if I kept you separate from my pursuit of Carstairs and his associates, you would be safe. But instead, you made me vulnerable through ignorance," she said without accusation. "If I had known the danger, I might have been better prepared." Sebastian closed his eyes. "You're right. I made the same mistake again, trying to protect someone I love by keeping them in the dark. And I nearly lost you, as I lost Amora." The word love hung between them, its significance unmistakable. "Sebastian," Julia said softly, "look at me." He opened his eyes, vulnerability evident in their depths. "You haven't lost me," she told him, taking his face between her hands. "And you won't. What happened to Amora was tragic, but it wasn't your fault. You can't live your life in fear of the past repeating itself." "How can you be so certain?" "Because I know you," she answered simply. "I know your strength, your honor, your capacity for love, even when you try to hide it. And I love you, not despite your past, but including it. All of it." Something broke in Sebastian's expression, the last wall crumbling. He pulled her into his arms, holding her as though she might disappear if he let go. "I love you," he whispered against her hair. "God help me, I've loved you from the moment I saw you dancing alone at midnight. I just didn't dare to hope you could ever love me in return." Julia lifted her face to his. "Then you've been a fool, Your Grace. But fortunately, a fool I've chosen to spend my life with." His kiss was gentle at first, then increasingly passionate as months of restraint dissolved. When they finally broke apart, breathless, Sebastian rested his forehead against hers. "Our marriage began as an arrangement," he said, "but if you're willing, I'd like to begin again, as a true husband and wife, building a life based on love rather than convenience." "I thought you'd never ask," Julia smiled, rising on tiptoes to kiss him once more. As the first light of dawn spilled through the windows of Thornfield House, illuminating the Duke and his Duchess in its golden glow, the shadows of the past finally began to recede. In their place grew the promise of a future neither had dared to imagine, one built not on duty or convenience, but on the enduring foundation of a love that had begun with a whispered proposition on a moonlit night, when a duke's or a lady dancing alone at midnight, and changed both their lives forever.